Hello, we're just going to go over a couple of the principles of design that I think can be a little bit tricky or troublesome to really come up with examples on. The first one is going to be movement. Your book really talks about what we call implied movement, and that is to imply that things are moving when they're actually in still images. And then there's also a thing called visual movement, which is more often or not what artists actually mean. And that wasn't very well implied in your book. So what you see in front of you on my screen is a little bit of both. It is implied that my little brother and sister are riding their bikes. You can see that there is you just know what riding a bike is, so you know that they're probably moving, especially since my little brother doesn't have training wheels on. So in order to stay upright, he is most likely moving. Now, you could really push implied movement with a motion blur. I could have set my shutter to a shorter speed, to kind of give him a little bit of a motion trail so that you could really see that my little brother is moving much faster than my little sister is. She was actually quite scared of her bike. The other thing is visual movement. Visual movement is how your eyes travel around the image. So if you close your eyes and look back at the image, you've most likely started to stare at my little sister first. She's the largest subject in the picture. And then your eyes will go forward the way she's going. And you might go down the path, or you might end up with my little brother. For my little brother, your eyes will go kind of back the way they came towards my little sister, because that's the way he is moving. Humans naturally want to see where other people are going, moving, looking, and so that gives a visual movement of the eye. You might have also done that in the opposite way that I just described. I have a couple other pictures that really kind of talk about movement. This one has an implied line, or a leading line, that's really emphasized by the focus. So this is some weird steak sushi my husband made. And you can see that there's a lot of focus drawn right here, and that's most often, if you close your eyes and come back to this is probably where your eyes start. And then because there's this leading line back, you probably follow it back and then over to this weird yellow gook. I actually have no idea what that is anymore. I think it's like some Japanese mayo-y thing that he put on it. Or you might have started back there because of how bright that yellow is and made your way back this way. One more visual movement piece, not that one. Figure out where it is. Often paths and really strong leading lines help with visual movement. You might start in the foreground and make your eyes move along the path to the background, move along to the foreground. So that is movement. Emphasis should be pretty self-explanatory. It's when something really pops. It's got, like these grasses are very contrasting against the background. They really pop, they have a lot of emphasis. And I'm sure you can find other pictures. Kind of imagine you have a field of white daisies and you just plop a red car in the middle, and that's really going to obviously stand out a lot, and that's going to get emphasis. Harmony is how everything is held together. They describe an image of a dirty character but wearing a gold crown. That is the opposite of harmony. That really pushes variety. But if, let's say, that character was a gold crown and a regal gown, then it would pull together more. See, a lot of pictures really naturally have harmony because things just seem to really fit. And you'll know when they don't because things will just stand out kind of weird. Variety, it's kind of when you have a lot of things going on. I don't even know if I have quite one with that here. A lot of different elements. So really think about these in like ways of the elements. So variety, you might have a lot of straight lines and curved lines. variety. You might have bright colors and dark colors. You might have figurative variety. And I'm staring out my window and I have all these beautiful built buildings. They're each a different kind of stone, each a different kind of layout, different type of architecture, so really pushing that. Balance, pretty simple. Let's go back to that original picture I had up. So you can see how the picture doesn't feel heavier on one side than the other. These grasses take up a lot more of their picture going upwards, but they're more spread out. And these grasses are a little bit more dense, but don't take up as much photo. So that could be considered a balance. This one's really balanced. You can tell it's almost the exact same on both sides. So you can really do symmetry or asymmetrical radial balance. There's some really good images in the book for that one about how that looks. Contrast, I think we talked about a little bit, is when things pop out against each other. That yellow really contrasts. Let's see here. The gold against blue, sharp against soft. If we go back to that path, there's a really high contrast between the light of the path and the dark shadows of the rail. Proportion is a little bit interesting. It's when the size of an object is in relation to the others around it. It can be often used to exaggerate. Like, let's say I have my cute little brother and sister here. They're kind of teeny tiny. They're 5 and 8. And they are really used to show the scale, the proportion of how big that sculpture is. And there's different ways to look at that. Pattern, pretty simple. And then unity is when you can get all of the elements and principles of an artwork together. So if you can almost go through an artwork and name almost every single element and almost every single principle, that's going to pull together. So this one is really getting there on unity. We have some beautiful contrast, we have balance, line and shape and color. Everything's kind of pulling itself together and you're really creating unity. Unity is similar to harmony, but pushed a little bit more to an extreme. Unity could also have variety if that variety is unified in some way. I know that's a little confusing, but there are a lot of good resources out there on what this looks like in photography. Now let's say you're ready to put this all together. Let's see what my instructions say. Yep, that's cheating. I was grabbing things off Facebook. So my instructions say that I need it on, it doesn't say what size. So we potentially will print this. So let's just do File, New in Photoshop. And you're going to set up a document, probably print, most likely letter. You can flip this back and forth. Do one for elements and one for principles. Hit create. File, place embedded. So what you're going to do for every single one of your images, they all come together. It's a weird one to have right there. Alright. My images here. Let's say I got my nice texture image. This is kind of the ice on the lake. I really like that. I don't need to hold down shift anymore. I can kind of resize it. Put it in there. And then for the sake of clarification, I'm going to write texture, hopefully in a much better font that doesn't look just gross. And it doesn't need to be that big. You could really just push it all the way down to 12. And then File, Place Embedded, kind of keep that going. So all the elements are in one. You can even title it, put somewhere on there, Elements of Art. On the next one that you can create Principles of Design. And really put that all together so that they're all on an 8.5 by 11. If you need to, if you're really kind of anal retentive and you want everything nice and spaced out correctly, you can go to View, rulers. You can see I already have mine up. Clicking and dragging from the ruler will give you, like, let's say you need a 1/4 inch. You don't want to be too close to the edge. Here, 1/4 inch there. And let's say each one of these pictures you math out should be like 3.5 plus a 1/4 inch. Then 3.5 again, which is 1, 2, 3.5 plus a 1/4 inch. And you just kind of keep going and you play around with it. That math's obviously wrong now that I'm looking at it, so I might have to adjust it all down like 1/4 inch. But this could help you out as well. If you just get annoyed by these, you can turn off rulers, you can turn off extras, which is the guide. You can lock the guides if they move, clear them if you needed to get rid of them too. So there's a lot of ways to make this all nice and clean. When you're all done, you're going to file, save it as a JPEG, submit it to Schoology, and you'll be done. So I might have forgotten to add a little bit. When you do submit it, in the comments section or in a notability extra to be submitted along it, I would like you to write at least one sentence that explains each principle or element and how they are demonstrated in your image. So we go back to mine, texture. Texture is examined by the implied texture of the ice across the cracked ice that looks cold and rough across the whole image. Or movement is implied via the bikes riding. I'm kind of really explain it because I can't get into your head. So it's going to be especially important for things like unity and harmony, so I can kind of see what you're seeing, because often there's more than one right answer. So just make sure that you're submitting that, and you can submit it in a notability document and attach it. I'll see every submission you do, so if you do everything as a separate submission, I'll see that. Or when you hit submit and there's that long comment section, you could do it there. Kind of hard to read, but I'll deal with it. Just make sure you have that as well. Thank you.